Hi, I'm Catherine Mann. I'm the Global Chief Economist at Citibank, and I've just been speaking at an American European Business Association lunch. So let's go over some of the key points of the lunch. One, of course, was to talk about the global economy. Everybody knows the deepest recession in memory in the global economy. It is on a rebound track at this point, but that's not the same as being on a recovery track. So let's talk about the challenges to actually getting into recovery. The headwinds are consumers are still very concerned about COVID, and it shows up in consumer discretionary expenditures. Second, trade continues to be in contraction. The legacy of supply chain disruptions, as well as tariffs and trade wars, continue to weigh on trade. And third, extremely important, CapEx, capital investment, is still very, very weak and is projected to be weak over the next couple of years. So lots of headwinds to a recovery in the global economy. Another way of thinking about a headwind to the global recovery is it's very fragile. The US and China seem to be making more headways towards recovery, returning to the pre-COVID level of GDP relatively sooner. They represent 50% of the economy, but that means 50% of the global economy is going to weigh on their ability to achieve those early rebounds to the pre-COVID level of GDP. 50% of the global economy continues to be very delayed in returning to the pre-COVID level of GDP. That kind of picture adds up to a very great concern about a permanent loss to GDP. After the global financial crisis, we returned to the growth rate, but not the level, not the trajectory. Represented about 5% loss of GDP back then. Here we are, kind of looking the same, where we'll return to the growth rate, but not the trajectory that we had in place prior to COVID, at least according to what we have in our projections. Maybe 5%, maybe 7% of global GDP is slated to be lost again. Who bears these costs? We know that there's rising inequality. That's one way of talking about bearing the cost. But another way is to look at intergenerations. Younger generations are bearing the costs of lower wage increases, more labor market scarring. And this has implications going forward because who's going to pay for pensions and healthcare for the older people? Who is going to be bearing the taxes that might need put into place in order to put debt to GDP trajectories on track? So we looked at monetary and fiscal policy in order to get us from rebound to sustained recovery. Those monetary policies are in place with very low interest rates, but we translate that into catalyzing private sector investment in order to get us to faster growth in GDP, more innovation, a rebound in the capital stock, and bringing people back to work to reduce labor market scarring. One way to catalyze private sector investment, something that will require companies to actually invest, would be fiscal actions, which is both tax spend and rulemaking, in order to support more active response to climate change. It's possible, it could be a global concern, it's certainly a global concern, but it's possible that there could be a global alignment of the stars whereby the US, Europe, and even China would be focused on catalyzing private sector investment to support achievement of debt sustainability, improved intergenerational inequality, as well as, of course, improving on climate. Those are the topics that we discussed at lunch. Thank you very much.